Kawhi Leonard's career is hanging by a thread after the NBA launched a shocking investigation into allegations he received millions through a questionable endorsement deal. His blockbuster trade back to Toronto has already been put on hold, and the deeper this investigation goes, the worse things are getting for him. Let me break it down. The trade that died on the table. The NBA has been investigating the Clippers since September of 2025. The question is whether the team moved money to Kawhi Leonard outside of his contract. That is against the rules. The NBA runs a salary cap. Every team gets the same ceiling. If a team finds a route around that ceiling, the league calls it circumvention, and it carries penalties for the team and for the player. At the Board of Governors meeting in July, Commissioner Adam Silver was asked where that investigation stands.
I'm hopeful that it will wrap up this summer, so that would continue to be the goal here.
He was then asked whether the league itself had stopped the trade from going through.
And I just want to clarify, so everyone understands, the league did not pause the trade.
So the league says it paused nothing. Silver put the decision on the two teams instead.
The parties to the trade made a decision not to go forward, given that the investigation remained open and any possible impact on Kawhi or his contract was yet to be known.
Any possible impact on Kawhi or his contract. That is the commissioner of the NBA saying he does not know what happens to Kawhi Leonard next. There are two impacts on the table. The league can void his contract. The league can suspend him. Both sit inside the league's power. Neither has been used. Leonard is 35 years old. His deal carries a cap hit above $50 million for the coming season. If the contract is voided, he becomes a free agent in July, when almost every team has already spent its money. If he is suspended, the ranges people around the league have discussed run from 20 games to a full season. Toronto would have carried all of that. The Raptors were the team receiving him. Any penalty attached to his contract lands on their books, not on the team trading him away. So Toronto stopped. The Clippers deny all of it. The team says it did not route money to Leonard. Steve Ballmer says he was defrauded. Leonard has said he is not stressing about the investigation and has pointed the questions at the league office. None of those denials have closed the file. Leonard sat courtside at a Raptors game during Summer League. He was not a Raptor. He was not being traded. He was watching. The investigation opened in September of 2025. By July of 2026, it was in its 11th month.
It's been 10 months, Tim. What do you make of this?
Silver had already been asked about the timeline once before, at the finals in June.
Adam Silver's contradicting what he said at the beginning of the finals in early June.
Here's the quote from June that he was measured against.
We are close to the point now where I think we need to wrap this up because you also need finality.
He said the teams needed to know what they were dealing with.
The team has to understand what situation they're going to be operating under.
That was June. The trade agreement came at the end of June. It stopped in July. The league is not running this itself. It hired outside counsel to do it. And on the 14th of July 2026, the investigation did not close. It expanded. All of it goes back to a company that sold bank accounts and planted trees. The company that planted trees, Aspiration, was supposed to be the future of money. It was founded by two men, Joe Sandberg and Andre Cherney. The pitch was simple enough to fit on a billboard. Put your checking account with us and your money will not sit in a bank that funds oil rigs. It will plant trees. It will buy carbon credits. It will pay for the world your kids inherit. A green bank for people who felt guilty about their own savings. It worked. Aspiration became one of the loudest names in that space, wrapped in celebrity endorsements and climate language and the sort of optimism that reads beautifully in a pitch deck. And in 2021, the richest owner in American sports opened his wallet for it. Steve Ballmer put somewhere between $50 and $60 million of his own personal money into Aspiration. Not Clippers money, his money. Around the same window, Aspiration became a headline sponsor of the Clippers, a partnership reported at roughly $300 million, stitched onto the jersey and wired into the plans for the Intuit Dome. So far, this is just a billionaire believing in a brand. Then came April of 2022. Kawhi Leonard, through his limited liability company, signed a 4-year endorsement deal with Aspiration worth $28 million. On top of that, roughly $20 million in company equity, handed over by Sandberg personally. Read the timing again, because the timing is the entire story. That deal was signed and announced around the same period Leonard was locking in his contract extension with the Clippers. The team's biggest sponsor, funded in part by the team's owner, was suddenly paying the team's franchise player $28 million on the side. And it did not stop at the endorsement. There were carbon credits moving between the team and the company in the same window. Money leaving the Clippers, landing at Aspiration, and money leaving Aspiration, landing on Kawhi Leonard. Draw those arrows on a whiteboard and the shape they make is uncomfortable no matter how innocent each individual line is. And what did Aspiration get for its $28 million? Almost nothing. The contract gave Leonard broad discretion to decline work. He was not required to show up. And by the accounts of people who worked there, he did not. Little to no public promotional duties, no campaign, no commercial anyone remembers. A no-show deal sitting inside a company that was screaming for attention. Inside Aspiration, the staff could not make sense of it. They had signed one of the most private athletes in professional sport, a man with a small social media footprint and no appetite for the camera. He was the wrong face for a brand built on shouting. So they tried to invent one for him. Someone landed on a comic book concept, turned Kawhi Leonard into a tree, a Groot-style superhero, a walking forest, a living carbon offset. Creative teams sat in rooms and workshopped a silent, unsmiling NBA champion into a piece of sustainable marketing folklore. Then the instruction came down from above. Stop thinking about Kawhi, this feels like a dead end. And that was that. The campaign died in a conference room. No public work was ever produced. The $28 million stayed where it was. Some staff walked away thinking it was just a misfire, a bad marketing bet by a company that made plenty of them. Others walked away thinking something colder, that the marketing was never the point, that the marketing was the wrapper, because there is a rule for this. Article 13 of the NBA's collective bargaining agreement is the anti-circumvention clause. It exists for exactly this scenario. You cannot pay a player above the cap by routing the money through a friendly third party and calling it something else. You cannot let a sponsor do what the payroll is forbidden from doing. Aspiration, meanwhile, was collapsing. It bled money. It laid off staff. In 2023, Ballmer reportedly went back in for another $10 million as the company sank. Eventually, it went bankrupt, and Kawhi Leonard was left standing in the creditor line, still owed money by a company that had bought his name and never used it. So the question that has swallowed 11 months of the NBA's life is this: was that $28 million a marketing deal that failed, or was it payroll wearing a costume? Nobody outside that investigation knows yet, but somebody made sure the world found out it existed. The podcast that started it all. In September of 2025, none of this was public. There was no investigation, there was no trade freeze, there was a bankrupt green bank nobody was thinking about, and a quiet superstar with a bad knee. Then a reporter published the documents. Pablo Torre laid the paperwork on the table. The endorsement deal, the LLC, the equity, the owner's investment sitting upstream of all of it. And the league office could not pretend it had not seen it. The NBA did not hand this to a compliance officer with a spreadsheet. It reached for the heaviest weapon it owns, Wachtell Lipton, the New York firm the league calls when the stakes are existential rather than procedural. You do not hire Wachtell Lipton to write a memo. You hire them to build a case.
The league brought in an outside law firm to conduct this investigation, and so now we wait to see the conclusion of that.
And while the lawyers worked, the criminal courts were doing their own excavation of the same company. Joe Sandberg, the man who co-founded Aspiration, the man who personally handed Kawhi Leonard roughly $20 million in equity, the man who brought Steve Ballmer into the building, pleaded guilty to wire fraud. In June of 2026, a federal judge sentenced him to 14 years in prison. Investor losses tied to the scheme were alleged to run somewhere around $248 million. Prosecutors had pushed for more time. The man at the center of the NBA's paperwork was going to spend the next decade and a half behind a wall. And here is where the story bends in a direction nobody expected. Sandberg sat down and talked to the NBA's investigators. Sit with that for a second. The one man alive who knows exactly why Kawhi Leonard was handed $28 million and $20 million in equity. The one man who could say whether Steve Ballmer asked for it or was blindsided by it is now a convicted felon with 14 years ahead of him and nothing left to protect. A man in that position has no reason to shade the truth for a billionaire. He also has every reason to say whatever helps himself, which is exactly the problem with the only witness who was in every room. The Clippers, meanwhile, took a position and have never moved off it. Their line is not that the deal looked bad, and they can explain it. Their line is that they are the ones who got robbed. Ballmer lost his personal investment when Aspiration imploded. He sought consideration in Sandberg's sentencing as a victim of the fraud. The team's statement has been blunt about it. They did not funnel money to Kawhi Leonard through Aspiration. They were victims of a fraud initiated by Sandberg. That is the defense. We did not build the trap. We fell into it. Then in June of 2026, the investigators came for Leonard himself. He sat for an interview. So did Dennis Robertson, the man the entire league knows as Uncle Dennis. Leonard's uncle, his advisor. The figure who has hovered over every major move of this career. The man widely credited with engineering the exit from San Antonio and the arrival in Los Angeles. If there was ever an architect on Leonard's Leonard's side of the table, it was him. And now he was in a room, answering questions from a Wall Street law firm hired by the NBA. Leonard's public posture through all of it has been exactly what you would expect from Kawhi Leonard. He said he was not stressing about it. He pointed the questions at the league. He said nothing that could be used, and the players' union has grown impatient. 11 months of investigating, and the NBPA has questioned the length of the whole exercise, seeing no strong there. The frustration is not just about the calendar. It is about who has to live inside the silence. No decision came, instead, on June 30th. The Clippers and the Raptors did something that forced the league's hand. They tried to trade him anyway. The piece of paper that blew it up. Think about what that trade was supposed to be. Kawhi Leonard, 35 years old, going back to Toronto, the city where he hit the shot that bounced 4 times on the rim and fell. The city that threw a parade for him and then watched him leave in a week. A championship ghost returning to the building he made famous. It is the kind of story that sells a season, and it lasted about as long as it took the league office to find a printer.
The league placed, from what I've heard, an addendum, a memorandum, whatever term you want to use for like an extra piece of paper.
Not a ruling, not a punishment, a page. Slipped into the stack of documents that every trade has to pass through before it becomes real.
An extra page into the preliminary trade report that specifically in writing put in these kinds of conditions that kind of freaked the Raptors out.
And what was written on it turned the whole deal radioactive.
We are on the hook for everything if Kawhi's deal is voided, if he's suspended for X amount of games, whatever.
Toronto read that sentence and understood the arithmetic immediately. Take Kawhi Leonard, and you're not taking a player. You're taking a lottery ticket with the numbers scratched off. Void the contract and your star evaporates. Suspend him for half a season and you have paid a fortune for a seat on your own bench.
And that's what blew it up.
One page, a trade that would have reshaped the Eastern Conference, killed by a memo, and understand what Toronto was being asked to accept. Not a risk they could price. A risk with no ceiling and no timeline, written by a league that would not tell them when the ruling was coming or what it would say. No front office signs that. You cannot build a roster around a man who might not legally exist on your cap sheet by October, and that is where the anger starts. Because the league had known about this since September of 2025. 11 months. Ballmer, Leonard, Uncle Dennis, Sandberg, Clippers executives, Aspiration staff, all of them interviewed, and the NBA never picked up the phone to tell either team what was coming. At the Board of Governors meeting, Ben Golliver of ESPN put the question directly to Adam Silver. What did the teams know, and when did they know it? Silver did not blink.
All I'll say is that the issues were well known to the teams.
His argument was that anyone attempting this trade already understood exactly what they were touching.
That included potential agreements that were entered into by Kawhi or his representatives.
And he refused to accept the idea that moving Leonard to another roster would somehow wash the problem away.
That somehow all those issues would go away by virtue of being traded, I just don't find that credible.
Then came the line that told everyone how the commissioner really felt about 2 front offices claiming to be blindsided.
But I don't think any of this information should have been a surprise to anyone involved who thought about trading for him or part of those discussions.
Translation, nobody was surprised. Everybody knew. Stop performing shock for the cameras. But that answer did not survive contact with the people who cover this league for a living. Because there is a difference between knowing a story exists and knowing that a specific clause is about to be stapled to your paperwork.
Which came off to me as, if you were just an NBA fan, you could have put 2 and 2 together, which is not a good enough answer to me.
That is the state of it. A trade agreed, a page inserted, a deal dead, a commissioner telling grown men they should have read the room, and 2 weeks later the investigation got hungrier. What the league can actually do to him. On the 14th of July, 2026, The Athletic reported that the probe had grown a second head. Investigators were no longer only looking at Aspiration. They had found a second sponsorship deal previously unreported with another company entirely, and they had started asking whether the Clippers improperly covered unreimbursed expenses for Leonard 11 months in, and the scope was widening instead of closing. That is not what an investigation does when it is finishing. That is what an investigation does when it keeps finding doors. Kawhi Leonard's career is not over. Not by the NBA's hand. Look at what the league can actually do under Article 13, and the picture changes completely. The penalties for cap circumvention are a fine up to $7.5 million, forfeited draft picks, and voided contracts. Every single one of the heavy ones points at the Clippers, not at Leonard. The team pays. The team loses picks. Ballmer's front office wears it. Leonard's exposure is narrower than that. A suspension. And only if investigators can prove he knew he was being paid to circumvent the cap, rather than being a man who signed an endorsement contract his uncle brought him and never bothered to show up for. Now count what 11 months has actually produced. Wachtell Lipton has interviewed Leonard, Uncle Dennis Ballmer, Clippers executives, Aspiration staff, Sandberg himself from inside a federal case. Leonard has denied participating in circumvention. The Clippers insist they were defrauded. The players' union sees no strong there, and no smoking gun has surfaced in public. Think about how strange the evidence actually is when you hold it up to the light. The strongest thing anyone has against Kawhi Leonard is that he took money and did no work. That is the whole scandal. But a no-show deal is not proof of a conspiracy. It is proof of a bad contract. Aspiration was a company that torched hundreds of millions of dollars and put its founder in prison, signing a superstar it could not use, and then failing to build a single campaign around him is not evidence of genius. It is evidence of the same incompetence that killed the business. To suspend Leonard, the league has to prove he understood the arrangement was designed to beat the cap. Not that it looked bad, not that his uncle negotiated it, that he knew that is a high wall. And 11 months of climbing has not gotten anyone over it in public. The clearest evidence is the memo itself. If the NBA had proof, it would not have needed to attach a warning page to a trade report. It would have ruled, you write conditional language when you do not have an answer, you issue punishments when you do, so no, he is not finished, not by this. But something is ending, and the investigation is only holding the door. Kawhi Leonard is 35. The quad tendinopathy that started in 2017 never truly left him. A partial tear of the right ACL in June of 2021 cost him an entire season. A torn meniscus in that same knee in April of 2023. Chronic soreness that pulled him out of the 2024 Olympics. Since 2018, he has missed roughly 298 of 547 possible games. More than half his career spent watching. Whatever is left of that career is measured in months, not years. And those months are being spent inside a law firm's filing cabinet, waiting on a page in a fax machine. The NBA cannot end Kawhi Leonard's career. It can only spend it. Found this information exciting and unbelievable. Be sure to check out other similar and amazing videos on the screen. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next video.